Well, Lisa, by the way, we searched through my computer. We didn't receive that email.
It's so weird, but you declined it.
I know. Well, yesterday, Jenith she had her screen open and she had some PDFs. And everybody's wondering who's printing all this stuff. Her computer decided to print what was there, 181 pages. So we've got some major stuff going on, and
you've got some ghosts in your network.
yeah.
That's so funny because I was like, well, everyone responded, and so I went in and checked, and you had declined it.
Yeah, that's okay. Did I miss anything?
No, it was mostly just getting ready for the in-person.
I feel it. I still have that background that I can't get rid of. The cherry, that's a cherry orchard. They're picking it now, so that's an old picture.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that.
I forget. I probably had somebody help me.
One of the little ghosts in your network.
How many people are we expecting, Lisa?
We had 40 sign up. Oh, we just got another.
Well, I think we'll get started here. We've got how many on there now, Lisa?
16.
16. Okay. Well, more will be trickling in shortly here, so we'll just get going here. The Contractors Roundtable, for what some people don't know, is what we usually do during our convention. We have a voting period where we're voting in new directors. And what we do is we divide into two separate groups. The contractors go into one room, suppliers in another. We hash things through, vote on the directors to be placed on the board of directors for the TTMAC. So today, we thought we would just try a little bit of this separately. We've had a couple of years of chaos, and the benefits of contractors reaching out to each other and sharing some of our woes that we've gone through and successes is extremely valuable. And there is coming up a convention in October in Whistler, and these type of things that we're doing today, they happen all over the 3 days that we're there. It happens all the time. It could be in the hallway, it could be over a beer, or during the roundtable session. So I'd recommend that people consider joining us in Whistler in October. A little bit of business we got to take care of, just make sure that we're keeping our mics muted and our phones off, etc. During this time, one of the things that we do is we discuss things in non-proprietary, meaning that we're not talking about brands of products or even contractors. You know, I may say that myself and some peers, we do this, you know, because, and I know that we do that because we share some information, but we just keep it to a non-proprietary. So for discussing a product, just refer to it as the FinSet or peel and stick membrane or whatever. What we're doing right now, we just have a little teaser. The TT-MAC has been working on a program for, in our training, we have our online training courses, taking all those modules. And now we're taking the next step for the installer to have a certified installer, meaning that we as TT-MAC will test. This is very similar to what's been done in the US for quite a long time. The CTEF has been doing this. They're the association that does the testing, but all of the associations in the US recognize it and recommend that their members participate with that. And some people have seen it at surfaces in Vegas. They'll have a central area where you'll see the inside the cage tile setters going at it in these modules. So we have a little teaser about what we've been able to produce, and we're not going to discuss it though, because this is something that still is going to the board of directors in a couple of weeks, and we'll be seeing it. We'll be seeing a test demonstration of it, and then our plan is in October to be starting with our first exams, possibly. Worst case scenario, by the beginning of 2022, you'll see the ability to have a certified tile installers. But like I said, we're not going to discuss it. So it's just kind of a teaser about what we're doing. So Lisa, can you play that? We'll get it going.
Sorry about that.
So you can see from that, it's looks like a fairly simple installation, but it incorporates quite a bit of what we do as tile setters. So, and it is an evolving scene where you'll see 2 years from now, the module could be a little bit different. It'll probably be the same size, but it could be a little bit different. So now we're going to move on to with the roundtable. It's basically questions and answers. And so if you have any questions, if you send it to Lisa in the chat, you can practice just looking where that chat is, and you can see you can send Lisa the question. And then we are going to ask you to just open up your mic when you're responding, and then once you're completed with your segment, let's turn that off. And then answering the question would try to get, folks, if you have success with what the question is, then I'd like you to step in and feel free to share your thoughts. So Lisa, I think there were some questions that came in ahead of time.
These are the two we got ahead of time.
Who has experience with spray-on applications? Spray-on applications, that was probably waterproofing.
I believe it was yeah, it came in after we did the pools.
Oh yeah. So that's where, if you have a large installation where there's a pool tank, or could be an exterior plazas or something like that, that spray on could be an option. Does anybody have experience with that? Be great if a contractor did. One of the suppliers, I think there's a couple of suppliers here that do have that. I think what they're looking for, who's asked the question, is probably asking for equipment and what products that could be used. Do any of the suppliers want to sell their product that is good for this?
This is Dale. We don't make a spray on waterproofing. All I can say is that, the manufacturers that do provide that have very specific requirements, especially the thickness when it's wet, and then what the drying thickness is when it's cured. I think also humidity and direct sunlight, because obviously a lot of times if it's a pool, it might be outside. All those things have to be considered. It's a difficult installation that only experienced installers should really attempt. And if you look in our manual, the 093,000 manual, it is one of the ones we have a trowel beside, saying that, you should have a contractor that can show, that they've had more than 5 years experience doing it, and previous projects that they've done as references. But as far as specifics on type of products and that, you'd have to go to another manufacturer that provides that.
Yeah, I don't personally have experience with that. With all our water features and some peers that do the pool tanks, we're using trowel applied or rolling applications for that, and usually going in 2 or 3 coats in order to make sure we have the right thickness and bearing the mesh, if there's a mesh that's being used. Okay, so I don't think we really helped out. What are the ramifications of combining 2 different manufacturers' products to install a system as a shower? This could be a result of the possibility of somebody taking one manufacturer's possible like a hard product, say a drain or niches or something like that, and then using a second manufacturer's waterproofing system in order to have the shower I suppose also are a water feature, keeping it waterproof. Obviously, that would void warranty from the manufacturers. Like, the manufacturer's going to look for, some sort of link that if there's a problem, like what's the weakest link, and when there's no research and development into combining two systems, then it would be up to the contractor. In my opinion, it would be up to their liability. And so that's where, if somebody is switching and using 2 or 3 different products to create a system, it comes under the sole liability of that contractor. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to fail. It would just mean that there could be ramifications if there is a problem later. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Sure, Craig. It's Sherry from Ardex. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're hearing you good.
Excellent. So I think it's always best to check with the manufacturer of the products as well. Sometimes manufacturers work together and they do supply products or have recommendations that will enable you to use products together. But your best bet is to always check first. As Craig said, you could void the warranty or it could become a problem down the road. But there are some cases where a manufacturer will work with another manufacturer and make sure that that product is tested together and they work together just fine.
Yeah, so you could get from one of the companies, you could get a sign off for that particular project, right? So, okay.
I think one of the biggest concerns, Dale, again, from Schluter, is the liability aspect of it. I'm sure Sherry's been involved in projects and we've been in projects where the contractor decided that they wanted to maybe, share the wealth, so to speak. It was one project I was on. He said, well, I don't want to give everything to one company, so I'm going to use somebody's waterproofing and, our trays or whatever. And we said, well, look, the issue is that there's a problem, there's a failure. Who do you point your finger at? It's going to be a spitting match, and it makes things extremely difficult. It's not that it's impossible, but it certainly is, really makes it, everybody pointing their fingers at each other. So, as Sherry said, in some cases, if you do have a sign off by the companies, the manufacturers, that they're fine with each other's products being used together, then great. But if you don't have that, the liability can be huge, and we had one project that was 900 showers and the contractor took the liability, and luckily never was a problem, never been called back. But I was not sleeping well for a while when I thought about it, because if they did start leaking, I knew it was going to be a hell of a liability and a lot of finger pointing. So that's kind of our thoughts on combining, or what we call Frankenstein or Frankenstein systems.
To everyone, I have a question. This might actually be best for Dale. Okay, it's a technical question. Will the TTMAC be elaborating more on CSP and other recommendations over concrete, like hydrophobic concrete in submersive applications? Specifications have been updated regarding divisions 3 and 9. How does the TTMAC plan on supporting and updating this info?
Well, I mean, this is actually a pretty good opportunity to let everybody know that, we probably need to go a little bit more better specifics in what he's asking for. I mean, EPS, we do have a little bit more details than the US and Tile Council's handbook. They don't recommend or have any recommendations on the minimum PSI required for some of these shower trays or heated modular screed systems. But the reality is, we are just in the process of starting to revise the manual. I've already started to distribute some of the requests and submissions that we've had. So if this individual could send us even more specifics on what he's really calling out for, then we definitely can take a look closer at it and make sure that it's included into the revision of the 093,000 manual. And we probably, if it's something very pertinent that we think it really needs to be added quickly, we are starting a live addendum on the internet on the TTMac website. We've got a couple items we're about to put on there. And if the subject matter that he or she presents to us, we feel that it's diligent, that we don't even wait for the printed revision, we will add it to the live addendum.
Hopefully that helps you answer the question.
Yeah, and maybe one point too is that, another area that's brand new is self-leveling. The self-leveling standard is finally been approved. So, we have actually very little reference to self-leveling because there was no standard. Now there is. So we will be incorporating that into the handbook, as well as having a separate couple of details specific to self-leveling.
So yeah, what Dale touched on there's recently it's probably been a long and onerous efforts from a lot of people, mostly out of the US, that trying to get the standards higher for what we see at the jobs. And that's a question that I get asked all the time, like, how do we deal with some of these we're given floors that have been self-leveled by others, and this kind of comes where it meets the cement meets the floor, is you get an overwatered self-leveling, and we've been given it, and this is what you're supposed to work with. Like, a lot of times it's not even flat in the first place, but which is floor flatness is another topic. But a lot of you contractors have been given or produce it ourselves, where we have an overwatered self-leveling that we have to go on. I'd like to hear some thoughts about how to deal with that. There could be all kinds of ways to deal with it, and some of it's like ripping it out and starting over. But is there any ideas of what to do with an overwatered self-leveling substrate that we've been given?
I believe Sylvie had something she wished to mention.
Hi, Sylvie from Mapei. Actually, I was just going to go back to Dale's comment. In addition to not, or having the applicator having the liability of mixing the products, so say like manufacturer A, B, or C, unless that manufacturer approves it, it's also in the specifications, or in a good specification, that the material, the tile assembly, should be from one source manufacturer. So I just wanted to point that out too. So if a contractor is taking that risk, it's also in the specifications, therefore the applicator would be responsible for any failures.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. The contractor's responsible. Yeah. Does anybody have any thoughts on overwatered self-leveling?
Sean Millman does.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Sean, is your mic?
Yeah, I just caught that a half dozen words in, but I was just going to say it really depends the extent to which the leveler has been overwatered. And sometimes you do have to go back, rip it up, and start over. But often what you have is material that is without enough binder, that's all floated to the surface, and it can be ground down. So if you grind down, sometimes a half-inch leveler pour only needs the top 16th of an inch or 1/8 of an inch removed from it, and then you find good hard leveler just below that soft surface.
Also, depending on the manufacturer, some do have hardeners that you can use. Probably still do the same process as Sean mentioned, grind down a little bit, but if you want to be absolutely sure, you can add a hardener to it and make sure that you've got a good solid surface that you can bond to.
Yeah, we've done that where we take the top surface off, grinding it down, adding a solution, and then grinding it again just to scarify it just a little more, just to open it up, and then yeah. But who knows what as long as we getting the right shear strength. Any more questions coming in?
Not yet. Sean had raised his hand. He's welcome to speak if he wants to.
Oh, nope, that was an accident.
Here's a couple other questions we'd had. What are the best methods and systems for exterior tile and stone installs, including water features? Does anybody wish to speak to that?
Where's Mr. Bort? He should be here.
He's supposed to be on here.
Yeah. One of the things that we've been able to have a local general contractor do over the years with all the struggles that we've had with exterior installations is they let their client know that they're budgeting for hoarding the area. So that's building a scaffold and shrink wrapping it like as an engineered system that could withstand the wind and heavy rains, and we've been successful with that. So beforehand, the area is covered, it's allowed to dry. In a lot of cases, heating is necessary also. That's the elements are the hardest thing for us to control. Timing is also an issue because they want it done yesterday. But trying to have a whole entire area covered, that's monumental. We've done some exterior seminars, and we've got a picture of a very large plaza out at Tuason Mills Mall where it was fully covered, and they were successful in the installation, and it's holding up to this day. Same thing with a water feature, fully enclosed, tarped, and then the system using, going with a single system would be important, like taking one of your partners and going right from the waterproofing right through to the grout and the control joints. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
One, it's Dale again from Schluter. I'm going to wear my TTMAC hat here more so than Schluter. We do have in the contractors, the tile installers handbook, there's about a 3-page white paper on doing exteriors, and it's almost like a checklist. And there's so many aspects to an exterior application that you need to be absolutely privy of, that you follow, and don't cut corners, because all you need to do is cut one little corner and it will rear its ugly head and you're going to have a massive failure. So, there's a lot of aspects, your proper slopes, how to deal with penetrations, what type of tile or stone, if you're going to use stone. I mean, today's day and age, I don't even know why I would touch stone outside. There's so much porcelain out there that unless you're an expert, you wouldn't even know that it's porcelain. And to put, natural stone outside today, especially in Canada with our extremities and weather, you're really taking a gamble. But coverage is huge. Hoarding is extremely important, as you mentioned. There's just a whole array of aspects. And then you got to think about too is a coefficient of friction, decoff. Is the surface you're going to put down going to be a slipping hazard? How well is it going to be cleaned? In some cases, maybe you need to have a higher slope than normal, depending on what size format the tile is or the type of texture that's to the tile. If you're going to do an exterior application, you really should make sure that you're very, very well versed on the challenges. Talk to somebody who's done, another installer who's done many installations, because I tell you, when they do go bad, they're usually really big liability and costs involved. We've seen some failures where we're looking at $60,000, $100,000, and that's just a residential application.
Yeah, there can be some big problems that come along with it, but you can be successful. But usually what happens is nobody wants to budget for it. They don't want to have those line items that are including for all this. They just want it done at the lowest price. So they should possibly be thinking about other products to use. But once we get some of these installations done, they're fantastic.
Yeah, they can be done, but you got to be extremely meticulous to make sure that you're following every recommendation or requirement by the manufacturer. The color of your tile needs to be taken into consideration. Issues with efflorescence, and it doesn't matter. You can have the best product in the world in the right conditions. Efflorescence will occur. I mean, if you don't cure the mortar out properly, and even some products that are considered to be efflorescence free, I've seen them still have efflorescence because they were subjected to moisture too quickly or they weren't properly hoarded. So it's probably one of the most challenging installations that we have in the tile industry. Next thing to it is a steam room.
Yeah. We're helping out somebody just now, some VIP with his stone patio in the backyard. I don't know how we got dragged into it, but we're battling rain. So finally the rain's finished and now we're battling heat, and they're just about to seal it. And so they're cleaning off these leaf stains. Well, they can't, because of that particular stone, you can't use an acid, and these organic spots are all over it. So today my guys are out there fighting with products to try and remove. We get stone problems every 2 or 3 months. We have some sort of a stone issue that we have to solve, and a lot of times they're new because there's so many different stones, and then one day it's used in this application, the next day it's used in using a different application in a different environment, and it reacts differently. So yeah, stone is also a problem.
I have another question from a contractor. He's asking, what are suppliers seeing repeatedly that's installed correctly? What should we be focusing our training on? So that's to the suppliers.
Can you repeat the first part? What are the
suppliers seeing repeatedly that's been installed incorrectly or used incorrectly?
This is Shamana from Holton Impacts. Hello, everybody. I've been seeing that there's been some reluctance to use uncoupling membranes when installing large format tiles. I don't know where, though the TTMAC does call for using this uncoupling membrane when installing large format. It's also cited in TCNA, but I do see reluctance by some installers.
Shimana, can I just ask, when you say large format, are you referring to porcelain panels?
Porcelain tile? No, I'm talking regular porcelain tiles of 24 by 48, 36 by 36. 1
Really?
meter by 1 meter.
Hmm.
I mean, is there sometimes I feel there's a disconnect between CSC. Is there anything that they're not carrying, or is it not being cited, or because sometimes the installers say they don't need to, even if it is specified.
Okay.
And because end of the day, you cut all when we extend warranty, so that comes on to us if there's if there's a failure in the.
Well, the problem we have is that uncoupling membranes right now don't have a standard. There is an ANSI committee, which I'm chairperson of, and there's an ISO committee, which I'm also chairperson of for in parallel. And we're extremely close. We're probably, I'm hoping to have a final draft submitted by the TSP show for ANSI, which is coming up in October. We've already almost got the final testing done. We're doing what we call round robin, where we have 5 participants or more labs that are doing the exact same tests, replicating exactly the same, using the same materials and installation technique for the test samples. But the reality is with uncoupling, the only restriction when it comes to like the large format tiles that, and we won't be specifying this in the standard, it'll be up to the manufacturer to divulge what their minimum thicknesses are. But in the case of like I'll wear my Schluter hat for a second, we recommend it should be at least 5 millimeter or thicker for these large gauge porcelains, which are basically 1 meter or larger. 1 meter by 1 meter or larger is now kind of the benchmark for the so-called gauged porcelain or porcelain panels. But one thing we should be aware of is that in Canada, we don't recognize, and it goes against the standard that was created for gauged porcelains and slabs recently, is we don't recommend or recognize the use of these products on wood, on plywood right now. And the main reason for it is that, first of all, the subfloors in the United States are thicker. By code, they are 3/4 inch thick, not 5/8. In Canada, we allow 5/8 or 15 millimeter versus 20 millimeter in thickness. The other thing is the way they test the materials on, say, a Robinson floor test is they basically lay a 4x4 plywood pad down, which is made out of 2x2s with a 1/4 inch piece of plywood, 6 millimeter plywood on the bottom, screwed in through the bottom, and then the subfloor, whatever thick, well, typically 15 millimeter in Canada, 20 millimeter in US, and then they apply XYZ product and thin set, and then bond the tile on there. Now they do cut the gauge porcelain into 4s, so they got at least 4 joints. But when they put the Robinson floor test on it, which is, for most of you, I hope you know what a Robinson floor tester is. It's one of our most commonly used test methods, ASTM C627. It's basically a carriage with 3 wheels on it. Starts off with soft rubber wheels, starts off at 300 pounds, goes to 600 pounds, 900 pounds, and that's a residential rating. That's all you really need for plywood. That's how they tested it. And that's how they put it in 108.19 for the gauge porcelain standard. We have in the 093,000 manual that we currently do not recognize going over plywood with these large gauge porcelains. It's too tricky. The big issue is the joints. If you got differential going on when the plywood is bending and deflecting, which you don't get much when you do it on a concrete pad like they do right now currently with the Robinson floor test. They're not getting, I think, true, accurate results with the testing that they did. I'm actually proposing a new test method where we suspend the floor, wood frame construction, 14.7, say in 14 feet 7 inches in Canada, and we run the universal floor tester, which is suspended on top, over top of the suspended floor, and get real deflection over the whole substrate, twisting action, vibrations and what have you that emulates what we really do have in a real life condition. So that's still to come down the road. We have meetings for that coming up in August for ASTM, which is a brand new test method.
Any other suppliers have things that are not being used appropriately?
Sure, I can add to that. Sherry from Ardex here. One of the things we see on a constant basis still with all the education out there and the amount of people preaching about it is dot mount or spot mounted tiles still. We see that a lot, and it is not recognized as a true installation method, and it usually leads to a failure somewhere along the road. That, along with not using self-leveling, just building up the mortar really, really thick in lieu of, we see those two things as our most common mistakes in installations still today.
And that actually falls into coverage, and coverage is also a big issue. And just to let you know, we are changing the term back buttering. Now it's going to be two terms being used. It's going to be flat back troweling, which means you're using the flat side of your trowel. And then it's going to be the other is notch back troweling. The problem is that in different parts of the country, including Canada, but this was also in the US, people, to them, back buttering means two different things, either one of those. So we are going to follow suit as the United States and change the terminology to be parallel with what they're doing in the US, and also make it a little bit more clear. Because if you think about the gauge porcelains, typically you're notch back troweling the tile, you're not flat back troweling. So we're differentiating the two, so it's more clear and less possibility of problems or mistakes.
One of the questions that I get asked often is the color of the thin set. Using a white marble, obviously using white thin set is pretty much a mandatory. You could get away if it's a little thicker to use a gray, but in general, we recently did a large project and you would think there'd be no problem to use the gray, but it just was, as it was curing out over the week, it was just so dark, and so we thought, well, let's experiment, and so we used a white thin set instead of the gray, and believe it or not, they reacted so differently. In the end, they probably couldn't tell the tones differences, but the performance was much better with the white thin set. So I got a question for the suppliers. When it comes to the white and gray mortars, we pay so much more for it. What is the reasoning behind the white versus the gray in the thin sets? What's the pricing factor? Why is it so expensive?
Sherry, you want to grab that one?
Sure. So a couple of reasons. First of all, sorry, let me just get my chair seated here. First of all, there are gray mortars that are engineered to work with moisture sensitive tiles. So it's just about doing the research and finding the ones that actually work. If you're worried about the translucency of the marble and the white showing through, then absolutely white is a factor. But if it's due to the moisture sensitivity in the tile, there are gray mortars that do work in that instance. Now, to get to your other question, Craig, the reason why white mortars are more expensive in most cases is because, one, the raw ingredients are a little harder to source. With everything these days, we see a difference in raw ingredients. And the other reasoning is the quality control on the product. So when you manufacture white, you have to clean every single instance, every single line, or have a completely separate line when you're manufacturing that product. If you contaminate it all, then you don't get the white anymore. You're starting to get into grays. And so it has to be kept in a very, very quality control environment. And that all costs money in the long run when you're manufacturing.
I still want it to be the same price as gray.
Let me see what I could do for you, Greg.
I got some gray that's more expensive than white, so.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, it's Todd Velikas here. I'd like to add one problem that I see almost on every job I go to is lack of movement joints. And, you know, I went to a shopping mall, walked the entire mall and didn't see a single movement joint. And it's just like, oh my God, it's going to be a disaster. And sure enough, go back to that mall and there's a bunch of guys on their knees replacing tile that's heaved up. And even in the smallest installation, a little bathroom in a residential home, you know, still need the perimeter movement joint. And I see guys grouting the tile tight to the walls, tight to bathtubs and other fixtures and that. And it doesn't always cause a problem, but it goes against industry standards. Most thinset manufacturers even put the need for movement joints right on the bag of thinset, yet very few people follow the rules.
I think there is, to defend the contractor, there's times where they're told, no, you're not putting control joints in, and they go along with it. They don't realize that they know that it needs it, so it should be in there. But then there's the people that just don't want to pay for it because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to just grout it over and it's done with. At my age and level, it's not a question. I just do it. We have to redline it a lot of times on the drawings where they're going to see it, and it shows up a little darker sometimes if we're using a silicone. It shows up a little darker, but that's just the way it is to protect the installation, right? So
yeah, Simon here. Just funny on that, the expansion joints thing. We did the quarry tile at the Vancouver Convention Center, like right around, I guess, before the Olympics. And the kitchen was 9,000 square feet. And there's Detra, and we were told not to do any expansion joints because there was like some massive expansion joint running through the whole convention center. I guess it was like a meter thick or whatever it was. But anyway, there was epoxy grout there. We didn't do the grouting, but I haven't gone back to see what happened, but I don't know. I don't know how that could possibly work. So anyway, I'm curious anyway. I've never heard of a 9,000 square foot floor with no expansion joints. Pretty ridiculous to me.
oh yeah, you'd have to, yeah, they could, maybe they got lucky. You know, an older building, maybe the concrete's not moving, and maybe that expansion joint's not moving, and it maybe doesn't get any temperature oscillations. Maybe they got lucky, but most of the time they're not going to be fortunate. They're gonna see a problem. I mean,
Especially with that hard epoxy grout.
yeah, well, even with cementous grout, you're gonna see some of that. We hit a building downtown 4.5 years later. They had the suite had an upgrade. They tiled the entire suite and not a single control joint anywhere. And with the PT cables that are in the building, instead of the slab separating, the PT cables, they pull everything in. And so sure enough, it heaved, like, you know, and this happens, people hear these pops and bangs going off at random because it's pulled it together and it's heat because the concrete is continuing to shrink. Somebody could correct me, but I've heard it's like up to 5 years, right? So 4.5 years later, then it popped, right? So your one is maybe held up.
You know, the other type of joint that I've run into is structural joints. So basically any building that's over 300 feet in any direction, that's kind of the rule of thumb. Engineers should be putting in structural joints to split the building in 2 sections. And I've been on at least 5 jobs in my career where I look at the building and I go, where's the structural joint? And the GC goes, oh, the owners didn't want it, so the engineer didn't put it in. That's when I said, oh, I think I hear my mother calling me for dinner. I gotta go now, bye, and ran away because that building's gonna crack in half like an egg. And you know, Shania Twain Center is a perfect example. The building literally cracked in half. Glass, the windows cracked, the roof was leaking, the floor cracked. It opened up big enough to put a toonie in. Because they didn't want to have this ugly structural joint running through their nice building. So they said, no, we're not going to put it in. And then when the tile's all cracking and popping, the tile installer is on the hook to a certain extent. So joints of all kinds I find are neglected, overlooked, unwanted, and everybody kind of goes, oh, okay, we won't put it in. Well, that's just wrong. The Yorkdale Mall in Toronto, engineers said, no, we're doing it in a way where we don't need a structural joint. And I went, okay, please don't use my product here because it's going to be a disaster. You can't build a building without a structural joint that size. So anyways.
I think it's Tracy here. I think that's where divisional communication needs to be taken into awareness and account more than it has been in the past. And I know that John has been working tediously on making that a thing for 3 and 9, but I feel like a lot of these problems can be avoided if there's more educational information being shared among the different divisions about the whys and the hows, and and that's why the manufacturers that put on the educational hands-on things for us are so critical as well, like for people to understand why we're not direct bonding to certain things with larger tiles and so on and so forth.
Good point.
And just one point too about the uncoupling aspect. All uncoupling membranes do not eliminate the use of movement joints on top. You have to use movement joints more or less as just described in 301 MJ. But the reality is sometimes people overlook it because they always consider movement joints as being a necessary or unnecessary evil. But there's no uncoupling membrane out there that eliminates the need of using movement joints on top of the tile, because the tile itself will expand and contract with and the grout and the mortar with changes in temperature, changes in humidity, and loading.
Well, that's where you come in handy, Dale, because you can put your Schluter hat on and you can show them the beautiful profile options. It doesn't have to be ugly anymore. And the more people understand that there's like beautiful solutions, then the more they'll implement them instead of shying away from them and thinking that they can do it without it, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, and to be honest, the other thing too that's allowed now, and there was a big study done in the United States by Tile Council, is that you can put, what would be technically control joints, just in the tile itself by doing like a basket weave. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to do it with profiles because it would be a nightmare, but sealant, you have to, get information from your sealant manufacturer, which one's the best for that, because you're going to have the combination of different stresses in multiple angles. But you can actually do a basket weave now, or zipper type configuration that normally, up to recently was not recognized as suitable. So that is now in ANSI, and we do actually have that in the manual now too, that you can do that. But what we do recommend is to be using a crack isolation or an uncoupling membrane underneath and not do a direct bond. Otherwise, you're really multiplying the stresses that are going to be applied to that joint, or joints, I should say.
We just recently did a a food court where the landlord tiled the entire area except for where each individual CRE was. And I thought about that. I thought this is going to be tough because nobody puts a control joint between the systems. So I sold them on adding a movement joint where we ended, so that the new tile coming in would have a movement joint from the main system. And so, you know, I don't know how much it cost them because it was 100 lengths of the movement joint, but you know what? They listen to me, which it's taken 30 years. Finally, somebody taking me seriously, but that could help them solve a problem because it's such a massive area, right? So. All right. There's a question on the board there. We have, you know, so many problems with the floor flatness. How are you dealing with it? I'm sure contractors are always having a problem. One of the things that I get so pissed at is that we're the quality control. Nobody from the GC or the builder, the formworks or whoever, nobody's checking. The quality control is ourselves, and then we end up having a battle. We're saying, hey, it's not right. Well, they don't want to hear it. They just want to hear us putting in our products. And it's the same thing with the flooring industry. They get the exact same thing. Is the quality control is up to us, and we have to prove it. And man, it just costs us so much money. It's a lost opportunity cost for us. Is anybody else having any problems with that?
It is a huge problem, Craig, and Keith Robinson, which maybe some of you may know, he's probably one of the top spec writers in Canada and the US. He's won awards for his writing. He writes our net master spec in the back of the 093,000 manual. He's working very diligently right now with the Floor Contractor Association, the Concrete Association, and us to try and make it as I guess you would say simplistic as possible, and to make sure everybody communicates between the different divisions to try and solve this issue. And I actually did send out an email he sent to me to my committee for the 093,000 manual for us to start deliberating on. But it sounds like the flooring association is also just as concerned about it. And maybe with our combined efforts and with some new specification language, which Keith is working on, to make sure that it's clear to the owners that these are issues that have to be discussed. You have to have meetings between all the different fields that are involved, so that these issues are dealt with before they appear, or prevented before they appear. So the good news is that it's recognized, and we're working really hard on it. I know that we're probably going to end up having a couple of meetings that will be just on this topic alone, to see how we can make it as clear and user friendly as possible between the different industries.
Hey Dale, Eric is not able to come to Whistler as our guest speaker. Can you ask Keith if he's into it?
Into this issue?
No, come to be our guest speaker at Whistler.
I can speak.
Whistler's too, you can't do it because Whistler is the same time as TSP almost. It's like 1 week apart.
Yeah.
But he is confirmed. Well, he says he's confirmed. I'll see him in a couple of weeks down at Coverings. But he did indicate that he loves Newfoundland. So,
Oh,
so.
no, I was thinking, can we get Keith Robinson to?
Oh, Keith, I thought you said Eric.
Eric, yeah, Eric is coming to Newfoundland next year, but this year we need that guest speaker.
Yeah, Keith Robinson, you know what? It would be a great idea. The guy is fantastic. You know, we've had him, he came to Kelowna, right? We had him in Kelowna for our convention there. I can ask if you like, but I know he's almost semi-retired, and I think they still have a bit of a hold on traveling. You know, I don't know if his office will allow him to travel, you know, for business, but certainly won't hurt to ask.
By October, we're golden.
What's that?
By October, we're golden.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's not that. It's just that I know in the past I've invited, I was willing to pay him to come to Montreal to my office for some architectural meetings we were doing. And he said he flat right out that we're not allowed to go. They won't allow us to travel. And this was before the coronavirus. So
just to
that's
add
changed.
a little bit there, Dale and Craig, just to add in my 2 cents, it's Sherry from Ardex again. I sit on the committee that we're helping develop that with Keith, and that's with the NFCA. And the NFCA would probably come and speak at that, no problem. Although, as Dale said, it may not be Keith itself because he is quite busy and he is on the verge of retirement. But it would be a great venue for them to come and speak at, whether it's Keith or whether it's Chris Maskell from the NFCA. I think that we could arrange that. Just to further Dale's point a little bit, and John, I know that you're on the line here too, and you sit on the committee as well. So if you have anything to add, you can jump in there. Really, what's happening with those specifications is bridging that gap between Division 3 and Division 9, and taking the liability off of the contractor's shoulders and putting it on the general contractor. So as part of the contract, that those floors must be flat when they're turned over. Whichever way he wants to do it is up to him or her at that point, whether it's to fix the concrete methods or whether it's to go in with self-leveling afterwards. But the spec language absolutely indicates that this must be done. It is a requirement of the job. That spec is in development. It is pretty much done and released. I don't think it has been adopted into every spec writer's masters yet, but we're on our way.
Sounds good. Yeah, these are slow processes, but it's going in the right direction. So everybody, we started out the meeting with that certified tile installer teaser. I think that this year it's the most exciting thing that we'll be implementing. The ability to have that specified on projects, to have that as a contractor having certified tile setters in the company. It's also a great marketing tool, gives some assurity to their clients. So look for that. I don't want to take the test myself. I'd probably fail it. So I want to wrap this up. If there's anybody that needs something afterwards, you can contact one of us that's been online here. But I want to thank you all for joining in, and I look forward to seeing a bunch of you up at Whistler in October. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay. Hope everybody has a good, successful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Lisa, I tried to get rid of that orchard in the background. I couldn't get it.
And now you're blurry.
Sorry, is it fixed now?
No, you're all blurry, but your background is very clear.
Oh. How's that? I don't know. Anyways, I'll get that fixed up for our next go.
The other, just quickly, thing I wanted to note was the board did decide that we're going to do that DCOF Slip Fall Tech Talk is the next one, and to do it in September after the summer.
Okay, is there? Owen sounded like he was like big on it. Wonder if he can front that.
Yeah, he found a lawyer that was willing to speak, so
Yeah,
I'll talk to him about that.
yeah. See if he can, be the host for it too.
Yeah, I'll get him to do that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
All right. You have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Hopefully I solve our computer things here.
Good luck.
Okay. Bye.